Rob words. All right, so what have we got? What did he post? Why English behaves like this? That's this latest video. It's 2 weeks ago. We did this one, and I actually liked it a lot. The English words nobody can explain. I'm actually interested in this one. Let's check it out.
The bird boy's big dog puzzled the girl's donkey. That is perhaps the most mysterious sentence ever uttered in the English language. Why? Because each of these words has an origin that nobody can explain.
All right, bird, boy, big, dog, puzzle, puzzled, girl, and donkey.
How can we still be in the dark about words as simple as big and boy? Let's find out in another Rob Words.
Cool.
Okay, let's get straight into it. Our first mystery word is dog. Say hello. This isn't actually my dog. There you go.
No?
Here you go. Go online and look up where the word dog came from, and you'll find this: of unknown origin.
Wow. I actually don't know that, but if you think about it, English has a word and it's hound, and that one is easily connectable to German, Hund, clearly of Germanic origin. I wonder why you don't use that one as a common one. You use hound, but usually it's like for specific things, like a bloodhound or a hunting, whatever. Yeah, where the heck does dog come from?
That's because dog seems to spring like a spaniel into English just out of nowhere.
Huh.
The story with most English words is that we can either trace them back to another language from which we borrowed them,
Of course.
or it has related words in some of English's sister languages, and therefore it comes from some ancient ancestor of English.
Yeah.
But not with dog. English is part of the Germanic
Yes.
language family. Those are languages that formed in Northern Europe from a common ancestral language known as Proto-Germanic.
Proto-Germanic.
Other members of the household include German, Dutch, and the Scandinavian languages. But look at all of their words for dog.
Yeah, look.
They're all relatives of our word hound. Meanwhile, the other usual suspects for words borrowed into English, Latin and its descendant French, use these C words, canis and chien, to
So when you have, like, even in Italian, he's correct, we say cane, and you use this word in situations such as, imagine the word canine. Yeah, that's, or like even, yeah, so that's it.
refer to man's best friend. English is the only language using the word dog or anything that looks like
Yeah,
it.
look at that.
Oh, is a doggy woggy. Hello. Did you hear me say the word dog?
Oh, hello. While Outdoor Rob just deals with that adorable interruption, I just want to mention something, and that is that there was actually one language that did have a word very similar to dog that meant dog. It was the sadly now extinct Australian Aboriginal language of Mbarbaram.
Right, but there can be no connection whatsoever if it's Australia, also because Australia doesn't exist.
Its word was so similar to dog that the first Western linguists to encounter it thought there'd been a miscommunication. But no, it was true. This sometimes just happens. Two cultures, in this
Yes.
case, either sides of the planet,
Yeah.
just happen upon the same sound to represent the same thing. In this case, the dog.
Absolutely coincidental.
It was purely coincidence.
Yeah.
It's not coincidence that there are, by the way, in some modern languages, words very similar to dog, usually to describe specific breeds of dog. But that's because they've borrowed the English
Yeah,
word.
of course.
The English word dog is still unique, as I've described. Anyway, am I done?
Couple of hunds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Where were we? So how did we get the word dog? Well, that is where the mystery kicks in.
I really find the sequence of words, where were we, to sound so weird in English if you really stop for a moment and think. Think about it. Where were we? Where were we? We were here. Where were we? We were here. Where were we? We were here. I mean, at this point, say we're. Where were we? We were here.
You see, at the end of the Old English period, when the Anglo-Saxons were around, about 1,000 years ago, the generic word for all doggy-woggies was hund, the precursor to our modern word, hound.
Cool.
So it was in line with all of the other Germanic languages. However, then William the Conqueror invades England in 1066, and the
Yeah.
English language goes to ground, with Willie's Norman French now the most powerful language in the land. For the next 200 or 300 years, England is ruled in French. But then when that's over, the English that re-emerges from the darkness, which we call Middle English,
Yes.
has a new word for our four-legged friends. They're now called dogs. Look at this, written in 1340. He is likened to the fell dog that bite and bebecketh all those that he may. All those P/B letters, by the way, are an old letter called thorn. That did the
Yes.
job that TH does now. It is a letter that I have regularly advocated that we bring back. In
I agree. Kind of makes it look like Futhark.
fact,
But how many layers does this guy
hardcore
have?
Forden t-shirt.
Well, but then again, he lives in England, so I understand that. Just think about it. He's got a t-shirt, then he has another t-shirt on top of that, then he has a jumper, and then on top of that, he's got a jacket.
Available in the Rob Word shop.
Cool.
Get on board.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yes, I'm wearing 2 t-shirts because it's really cold.
That's fine.
So anyway, the word dog has come from nowhere to become top dog, replacing hound as our main word for
Yeah.
a canine. But what the heck has happened since Old English? Well, nobody knows, but what we do know is that it was not an isolated incident, because the same curious tale can also be told about the words frog, hog, pig, and stag, each of which appear to spontaneously leap into our language at around this time. Amazing, right? And just baffling. However, there is something going on with all of these words, isn't there? They seem like they belong together, don't they?
Yeah.
And that might well be the key to how they came about. These words all have 2 things in common. 1, they're names for animals, aren't they?
Yes.
Obviously. And 2, they all end with a G.
I was going to say they're all relatively short, but yeah, they do all end with a G. And in fact, 3 of them have an O in the scent, in the Folker.
Well, on that second point, just have a look at their Middle English forms. The pattern there becomes even more
Yeah,
stark.
totally.
And actually, there's also a third characteristic that these words share, and that's that they each came to replace, in some or all circumstances, an existing word for those animals from Old English. Dog replaced hund, as we've discussed.
Yeah.
Hog, and especially pig, displaced the Old English equivalent of swine, swine. Stag became an alternative to the Old English hjort, an early form of hart.
Man, you should have kept that. That sounds so much better. And swine, actually, it's funny because in Italian for pig we say maiale, but for the category, for the umbrella term for all types of pigs, we say suino. So it actually sounds like that. I love the word suino. Sometimes I call my dog Suino. It's like his other name. He's a suino.
And frog, well, that completely replaced the Old English word for the ribbety amphibian, which was frosh. Now, that last example is potentially the most significant when we
Yeah.
consider what might have happened with all of these words.
So basically what could be is that actually frog was invented to match, reinvented. So it is frosh, but it was reinvented to coordinate. But still doesn't explain where these come from, but it could be that this one is artificially coordinated with the rest to create a pair, not a set.
What experts believe may have occurred is that all of these words started out as cute alternatives to the species that they now represent. Pet names, if you like. Perhaps the Anglo-Saxons, who spoke Old English, were in the habit of coming up with slangy little words for their animals, like we do with bunny and doggy and birdie, except their cutesy names ended with this g sound. Hence, frosh became frogger, and these other g words.
Interesting. You notice how he pronounced the vowel at the end? In Old English, that was a case. You would pronounce the vowels at the end. So when he said frogger, yeah, it's probably how it was. Man, this is fascinating.
Developed too. What backs this up is what I mentioned earlier, the fact that these words don't appear in Old English, not in the written record anyway, but they are in written Middle English. If these were just nicknames, they wouldn't have been considered proper in written Old
makes
English,
sense.
which was mainly the preserve of religious scribes, so they'd have been left out, whereas Middle English writing just better reflects the way that people were actually speaking. What's more, evidence that they were in use in everyday talk even before they start appearing in written Middle English texts lies in the fact that these terms crop up in the names of people and places. Documents from the 12th and 13th centuries include fellas called Wilfric Pig, Wilhelmo Hog, Roger le Dog, and William Lefrog. I'm not kidding. And as far as places, you also had Dogworth, now Dogsworthy in Devon, it's still there, and Higwood, which is now called Pickford in Sussex. Those are all from before we see these words written down in Middle English texts. So that suggests that,
They are not just cutesies. They're not. They're probably local regional variations. It still doesn't explain how they were created. We would have to look for like cognates maybe, but that's insane.
they are in use, because they're not just inventing these words for place names. But unlike with frog, the earlier forms that spawned hog, pig, stag, and dog died with the people who used them, who were presumably illiterate anyway. So we are never likely to know what those forms were. That is why dog, alongside all these others, is one of the most mysterious words in our language. By the way, I don't know if you saw that scientists just announced they got a step closer to solving another dog mystery. Namely, when they started to take on their distinctive shapes and become distinct from wolves.
Yeah.
Scientists analysed over 600 canine craniums from the past 50 millennia and concluded that dogs started to take on their own shape around 11,000 years ago.
Wow. So kind of coincidentally similar to some, I was just thinking of some, anyways, I'm not going to go into that, but I wanted to say, isn't the plural of cranium crania? Maybe both acceptable.
Wow. And thanks to Ground News, who sponsored this video, I can get the full amazing story. Ground News is a website and app that provides you with all the information you need to understand the news, such as information on where an outlet's biases lie and how reliable it is. On this story alone, it brings together over 30 articles from around the world, allowing us to compare the coverage. It tells us if a source is known to have a political bias and, most importantly, how trustworthy the source is. For example, the publication Science is marked as very high factuality, meaning I know I can go for that article and rely on what it has to say. I've been working with and using Ground News for a while now because I like what they do. I think it's never been more important to understand who your news sources are and whether they can be trusted. Ground News gives you all the tools to do that. If you want to get access to it, go to ground.news/robwords or use my...
Okay, so the ground.news/robwords for the 40% off. Lovely.
my special QR code to get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I have. And it works out around $5 a month or whatever your local currency is.
Cool.
I say, give it a go.
Yeah, it is quite solid.
Let's get back to exploring some of the
news.
great mysteries of the English language. The next word, whose origins have baffled etymologists, is big. I mean, it's big. It's the word big. Like with dog, look at the words for big from around Europe and you don't find anything else like it. Neighbouring languages are using words related to grand, great,
Yes.
or gross. Nowhere near the English oddity that is the word big. And again, like dog, the word appears out of nowhere in Middle English.
I mean, one could argue that now in the American vernacular, whenever you order coffee at Starbucks, you do say grande in my language. Problem is, though, that grande means big. So you have to now explain to me, my dear Americans, why that's the middle choice. And venti, I know it's the ounces and whatnot, and I get it. But if you tell me, oh, the big one would assume you mean the biggest, like the big one, right? So it does actually annoy me that you call it a grande. Not to mention, why is the shortest one the tall? Seriously, Starbucks, what are you doing? You're good luck in 2,000 years deciphering that.
Its meaning was slightly different from today. It could mean having great strength as well as having great size. Here's our old pal Geoffrey Chaucer using it in the 14th century in the prologue to his Canterbury Tales. Full big he was of brawn and also of bones. The eke there means also. It also appears in this amazing manuscript of the Death of King Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory from around 1470. It says, within 3 or 4 dates, Sir Lancelot waxed big and light. Waxed means grew. Lancelot grew big. The folk at Oxford say the word was mostly found in sources from the north of England, suggesting it was a dialect word that eventually caught on everywhere. But how the northerners came to start using it is unknown. Norwegian has a word, bugger, which I've definitely mispronounced. It can't be pronounced like that, surely. Anyway, and it means a mighty man. So it's a noun, not an adjective, but
It could be a connection, considering the fact that, like, the northeast of England had a strong Danish influence, the whole Danelaw, if you think about it. I mean, York was built. That could be interesting to see.
seems like it should be related to that word big, right, which can mean mighty. But whether we borrowed that word from the Scandinavian languages and it became big, or whether that word developed from the same source is unclear.
Yeah.
Anyway, eventually big would itself expand to become our main word for something of substantial scale, our go-to counterpart for little or small. So now I invite you to wonder, what word did it replace? Well, it's a word that we still use now, but
Okay.
only in a niched down
Let's
way.
see.
Old English had the word Mitchell, or, depending on your dialect, Muchel, the ancestor
Oh.
of our word much. And that
Wow.
was the word for big. But anyway, we've just discovered that Clifford the Big
Man, you are much. Yeah, too much McDonald's, I guess, made you much.
Red Dog is a big red beacon of English's eccentricities. But there is another towering figure from popular culture who also stands testament to our language's greatest mysteries.
Hi everybody, it's me, Big Bird!
That's right, my oversized avian friend, because after dog and big, we need to talk about bird third. The first thing to point out about the word bird is we're getting it wrong.
Okay.
It should be brid. Look at all of these early versions of the word. It's brid.
Wow.
And now I mention it, we're making the same mistake with third. It always used to be thrid, which makes a lot more sense, doesn't it, given that it's derived from the word three,
Yes.
not from thir. Both bird and third have gone through the same process called metathesis, a fancy word for when letters swap places. But the most interesting thing about the word
Oh, like they do in African American English, right? That's how they pronounce ask. They say axe, correct? That's what I thought. Or am I saying something silly? That's what I thought. I was expecting him to say bird in the word. Yeah, it makes sense.
The word has no corresponding form in any other Germanic languages and appears spontaneously during the Old English period. However, it didn't mean just any feathered thingy with wings like it does today. It meant specifically a baby bird. Check out this quotation from over 1,000 years ago. So it's in Old English. Oft se jo brodia hen to sprat hura furthera and the bridas the wormeth. In modern English, it says, often the brooding hen spreads her feathers and warms the birds, the bridas. But it's not referring to just any old birds. It's referring
Yeah.
to the hen's chicks. Bridas are little birds.
Ah.
Some reckon another word in that quotation may hold the key to where the word bird
Yeah,
came from,
sure.
brodia or brooding. Perhaps bird comes from the same source as our words brood and breed. It would certainly explain the spelling with the R first, wouldn't it? To my mind, that theory is also backed up by the fact that the word bird was also sometimes used to refer to the young of other species. Check out this quotation from as recently as 1500.
Wow.
A serpent had made his nest and brought forth his briddies there. So in this example, briddies or birds are snake babies.
Oh, wow.
Note that those also come out of eggs though, don't they?
Goodness gracious, this guy. Man, this is phenomenal. I love this video. I love it. Very good. Let me give him a like. And of course, as always, I strongly suggest that you check it out.